Doug Lesmerises with another Kings of the North Camp Report, this time with the Cincinnati Bearcats, but I'm not in Cincinnati. I'm in West Harrison, Indiana, where the Bearcats go to camp. We'll talk about that at the end. 26 years they've been coming here. It's like a camp. They live in dorms. The younger guys don't have rooms that are nice as the older guys. There's a dining hall right behind us here, and then you can see back here, there are two practice fields where they just held a practice here on Thursday that I watched. Let's talk football I kind of want to talk camp. No, let's talk football first. 3-9 last year for the Cincinnati Bearcats in Scott Satterfield's first year. Defensively, almost an entirely new secondary, and more importantly, a new defensive coordinator in Tyson Veit, flying around so far, right? Is it all perfect? No, but I think Scott Satterfield, the head coach, can sort of see the energy that he wants to see when he decided to make a change defensively. And then the big thing to watch is Dante Corleone, who's the defensive tackle for Cincinnati. That's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the country. He has been out. He was diagnosed with blood clots in mid-June. It was announced on June 28th that he was going to be out indefinitely. He's around, and I think there are positive expectations about his availability for this season. So him coming back, new guys in the secondary, a new energy, bringing Veit from Iowa State, where he was a linebackers coach. I think there's a lot of hope on the defensive side of the ball. And they've got to play better defense in a Big 12 where lots of people have quarterbacks who can throw the ball and teams are going to score. Offensively, it feels like they attacked their weaknesses, especially on defense, and they were able to continue the foundations of what they did well last year. And that starts with bringing back all 5 offensive line starters from a year ago. They have 2 future pros at guard in Luke Kandra, who is an All-American candidate at guard, and D'Artagnan Tinsley, who's also a future pro. So you have those 2 guys. You have Gavin Gearhart at center that some of the guys today were talking about, him kind of being the leader of the offensive line. And then John Williams and DeAndre Buford, the 2 tackles, both started every game last year. So that is a foundation that I think a lot of teams in college football would be jealous of. Corey Kiner, 1,000-yard back from last year, he also stayed for this season. And so I know there's confidence in that foundation for what Cincinnati wants to do. And then it reminds me a little bit of the situation at Rutgers this year. I don't think Cincinnati is nearly as established defensively as Rutgers is, but Rutgers also has a great back in Kalman guy, just like Cincinnati has with Corey Kiner. But they thought they needed to throw the ball down the field more effectively. So they went and got a Big Ten starter from last year. Rutgers got Ethan Kaliak-Manis. Cincinnati got Brendan Sorsby, who was the starter at Indiana last year. 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He'll take care of the ball, but he also understands he needs to take some shots too, because that, again, like so many teams, that's going to be the difference maker for Cincinnati. Lots of teams worry about the offensive line, man. We know that. When you have a foundation like this, it's like they were one of the most effective rushing teams in the country, but they were 3-9 because they weren't explosive enough. And I think Brendan Sorsby knows that.
There's a fine line of being too aggressive, but you have to have those shots down the field. I think it's tremendous for your run game. I think the run game that we have is going to help those shots down the field. And, you know, like you just said, you got to hook up whenever you do take them, and you just got to make sure that you're giving your guys a chance and that you got to trust them that they're going to go make the plays.
So that's an opportunity for Cincinnati to improve there. You know, like some depth at receiver. Xavier Henderson's a really good player. He was a good player last year. They're really excited about Joe Royer at tight end, the transfer from Ohio State. They really think Joe had some injury issues at Ohio State. They think he really has a chance to pop this year, though. So keep an eye there. You know, not the most explosive team in the country, but again, if they can improve at all from last year, they have a chance to be, I think, significantly better on offense. And then I can't help but want to talk about the future. I love backup quarterbacks. I love young backup quarterbacks. And we've talked about that throughout the North, we think there are a lot of guys that are really interesting this year. And I want to make sure that we add to that list Semaj Jones, the true freshman for Cincinnati. He's from St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia, the same school that produced Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyle McCord. Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State, now in the pros. Kyle McCord at Ohio State, now the starting quarterback for Syracuse. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Like a good program there, but Semaj kind of was the next guy up at quarterback after Kyle McCord. He is 6 foot 215, but everybody says he has like the ball jumps out of his hands.
Just keep helping him out. Anything he needs help with, I'm more than willing to help, and I let him know that as well. And he's unbelievably talented. He's got a crazy arm on him, so he's just got to stay the course. Still a young guy. I mean, every quarterback goes through it. As long as he's getting better every day, I think he's going to be in a really good spot.
So you can see the future at that position, and I just respect every team that makes a plan, but also is willing to address the present. So you see what they did going to get Brendan Sorsby, and what the potential is for the future. I don't know if that means Semaj Jones gets on the field in some way this year, but I think you are looking at a guy who's going to be on the field sooner rather than later in his career here at Cincinnati. So a lot of hope for that down the line, but I think Sorsby is a guy who can sort of help settle them this year. And if they get after it on defense, they build on the foundation of offense, and they just hit the shots a little more effectively, I think they've got a chance, because when you start with that offensive line, you're ahead of the game.
All 5 of those guys are leaders on this team, and there's 7, 8 that are probably going to play this year. So, I think the 3 that really 4. I don't know. There's a lot, and I think Gavin's the leader of that group. If you want to pick out one leader, and the leadership role that he's really taken this year compared to last year is. It's hard to emphasize it enough, but he's a great leader. We trust him he's making the calls up front. We trust him with that. He does a great job with that. So, the offensive line is definitely a group we're going to rely on heavily this year.
So we talked football. Let's talk camp for a little bit. 1999, I believe, was the first year that Cincinnati came to Higher Ground, is the name of this camp. It's a camp here year round. Like they have. Someone said they have like a search and rescue camp in the winter where they have people go into the woods and then you go look for them. But they have a lot of church camps here. They've had marching band camps here. But Cincinnati, their AD back in the late 90s wanted them to find a place like this. And there are not a ton of schools that do this anymore, but they do feel like it's a foundation for their culture. And I think they said they made 1 bowl in their history before they started coming here. And now they've kind of been a consistently winning football program. And you got to have great coaches. They've had great coaches here. You've got to have great players to do that. But I think they believe there's something here. 2 weeks here. They will go scrimmage in Nippert Stadium on campus on Saturday. They'll go for a day. But otherwise, they're here for 2 weeks. They pack up 3 semis. They bring all their equipment here. And then they get after it here, and then they go take naps in the afternoon, and then they go to bed at night, and they can have some activities together. But it really is a camp feeling. I talked to some people who said when a new head coach comes here, they're often kind of like, I don't know. And then by the time they do it, they love it. Brian Kelly, when he left Cincinnati and went to Notre Dame, I think was interested of replicating some kind of this thing at Notre Dame. And Luke Fickell, now at Wisconsin, immediately replicated it. UW-Platteville, Wisconsin goes to a little college an hour from campus, and they do their thing because Luke Fickell liked so much what Cincinnati does here. So Cincinnati, I think, knows they kind of have a special deal with Higher Ground. This is where the magic happens. This is where a playoff team was built. This is where teams that have won bowl games have been built. And so year 1 in the Big 12 was always going to be rough. I think you can say that to UCF. You can say that to Houston. You can say it to BYU. You can say it to Cincinnati. They understand that. They didn't have the depth last year. You look now, though, about 50 guys on this roster are transfers. There's almost like 47 new guys on the roster this year between transfers and the incoming freshmen. So they feel much better about their depth overall, which you need to have when you're playing power conference football. So understanding that last year was frustrating for Cincinnati fans. It wasn't what they expected. There was a new bar set here by Luke Fickell's success in making the college football playoff. But there is a foundation here. It starts on the offensive line, and it starts at camp. I'm going to go fish and make a pot and put it in a kiln. But that's our KOTN Camp Report from Higher Ground in West Harrison, Indiana, here with the Cincinnati Bearcats.